Yeah, can you see this now?
Yes, madam.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll now write, I'll go to the second talk, and that is about how to write the introduction section. So in the thesis writing part, I'm only going to talk about introduction, review of literature, results, discussion, and references. The other parts I'm not going to talk about because there is nothing much, methodology and all that. It's different for different groups, and there's nothing much to teach about the methodology. So I'm just going to talk about how to write the introduction section. And I acknowledge Dr. Manikandan. He was my first MD student in JIPMER. Now he's additional professor of pharmacology. A lot of his slides I have borrowed because the initial part of the talk also was made by me. So we share a lot of these slides. So what is the purpose of the introduction? This is because uh, generally we say that the abstract is a gateway for a scientific paper. Similarly, introduction is like a bridge which takes the reader of a thesis into the thesis as such and hooks them up. So the thesis, the introduction part of the thesis should outline what is the significance and the relevance of the thesis. Why should I read this thesis in full? That is the basic idea of this. So generally you expect it to be short and arresting, and the structure should funnel down from a broad perspective to a specific aim. So it is like an inverted pyramid or triangle or whatever you want to call it. So this is the general format. But what is the purpose? The purpose is to tell the readers why you undertook the study. Sir Bradford Hill, who is we often say that he was the person who made this IMRAD format. He asked 4 questions. And the first question is, why did you do the study? So the introduction is supposed to give the answer to the question, why? Why did you undertake the study? So in a thesis, because we are talking about thesis, you expect the introduction to be about 2 or 3 pages, around 3 pages at least. Okay. So this is the length of the introduction in a thesis. Whereas in a research article, if you're writing to a manuscript, you expect it to be just about 2 or 3 paragraphs, not more than that. Okay. So there are 3 elements of an introduction. If you remember this, you will be able to guide your residents to write the introduction part. What do we know? That is the background. So that is a first element. That is the background of the study which you have undertaken. That is a first element. The second element is, what do we not know? What is this? These are the gaps in the study. Okay, so what is a researchable problem? This becomes the second question, second element. And the third element is, why did we do the study? That is the justification. So these are the 3 elements of an introduction: the background, the researchable problems or the gaps which we have identified, and thirdly, the justification. If you
What happened? Give.
No, I can do it.
okay, if we are able to, someone, can you please mute, please? If we are able to identify, write under these 3 elements, we will be in a position to write a reasonably good introduction. Okay. So background, problem, and the justification. These are the 3 things which we need to write in an introduction, as simple as that. So first, you need to situate your research in the broader context. That is what we call by the background. So you need to establish your research territory. That is what you go to do in the first part of it. And then you establish and justify your niche. That is, what is the exact problem you have come to. So from the background, you go to your problem, and then the significance of your research. Because I said the idea of an introduction is to explain why you undertook this study. So in order to say why you undertook this study, you also need these first 2 elements, isn't it? Only then the justification will be able to, you'll be able to write the justification for undertaking the research. So these are the 3 elements in the introduction. Your research territory, that is a broader context, the niche area of your research, why your research is needed, number 2, and 3, the significance of your research, your justification. Now, if you know the structural conventions and the elements in each section, it becomes very easy to write the thesis. And what happens is we don't actually teach this to many of our residents. That is why it is important that you understand the elements. So for the background, the first element, you need to write a short summary of the current knowledge of your area. Concentrate on the best studies that are closest to yours. Okay, so this is what you will write in the first element. The current knowledge of your area, whatever you have chosen, and the best studies which are closest to yours. But don't give an exhaustive account of what has gone on before. This is something which we often do, where in detail we tell what has happened before. That you can save for your review of literature. It is also not necessary to put textbook knowledge into the introduction, especially in a journal article. In a thesis, you don't have to be that rigid about it. You can put textbook knowledge, but in a journal article, don't put textbook knowledge into the introduction. And then don't copy paste the introduction of the protocol. This I've already told you. So this is how the first element is written. That is the background. A short summary of the current knowledge of your area, and you can concentrate on what are the best studies which are closest to yours. So this is how you write element number 1. Now I'm giving you an example, effect of Alternaria species on exacerbation of asthma. So if you look at this introduction, asthma is the most common chronic respiratory disease of childhood and is also the most common chronic inflammatory disorder of airways. It is a condition in which the airways narrow in response to commonly occurring environmental stimuli. There are many such stimuli. Moles are also commonly known to cause asthma. So this is one way of writing. But you can simply write it like this. The mold Alternaria occurs ubiquitously in dry regions and is thought to be important in exacerbating the symptoms of asthma. What has been written in 3 sentences, three sentences has been written in 1 sentence. So this is how you keep on improving what you have written. Okay. So what is this? Why am I writing this? This is called a topic sentence. Topic, not topic. It is called a topic sentence. And I'll briefly explain what a topic sentence is. It is a sentence which expresses the main idea of the paragraph in which it occurs. So if you have a paragraph, the first sentence should write what this paragraph is about. Okay, so it expresses the main idea of the paragraph in which it occurs. That is called a topic sentence. So I just found this and I thought it was quite funny. So this fellow was asked to write a topic sentence and he said, it's my topic sentence. Okay. So if you look at many of our newspapers, you will find things like this. Okay, this I have just copy pasted from a newspaper article. The title is Chennai Police Personnel Rewarded for Nabbing Serial Burglars. Please look at the first sentence of this article which appeared in the Hindu. Commissioner of Greater Chennai Police, this person on Saturday rewarded a special team led by Annanagar Crime Inspector Kannan, who nabbed 2 habitual burglars who were known to be notorious thieves in Bangalore. This is what is called a topic sentence. Why? Because the later part of the article tells what happened. So some businessman who was living somewhere in Annanagar, his family went somewhere, burglars broke in, took 4 lakh cash, and he complained to Annanagar police station. And these people tracked these suspects, and with Bengaluru police they have written. So this topic sentence tells you exactly what is going to come later on. Okay, that this burglars were nabbed and so on. So this is a topic sentence. Just take any newspaper, you will find Many of the articles, if there is an article with 2 or 3 paragraphs, it will always start with a topic sentence. So that is a topic sentence. This is just to explain what is meant by a topic sentence, which you need to start your introduction with. Okay, so that's the first element. That's your background. The second element is the researchable problem. So what are the limitations or gaps that you have encountered with the work or problem that is being described till date? So you have already read, you know what are the gaps, because you are trying to find out how to address those gaps. So this has to come into your, is the second element, that is the researchable questions. So what questions still need to be answered, that will go into your second element, second part of the introduction. And the third part is, how will your work add to what is already known? Why am I doing this? So if I find out this, I will be able to answer these questions. Okay, so what will your work add to what is already known? So why am I doing this? This is the question which will be answered in the third element, your justification. So background, gaps, and the justification. So this is the structure. It's an inverted triangle. Background is what we know. Researchable problem is what we don't know. And the justification is why we have done this study. Some of the journals, if you see, they will say what this study adds. What is already known about this problem, what this study adds. These journals, they put it in some box, you will find it in certain journals. So finally, you arrive at the statement of purpose and the rationale. So this is how the inverted triangle works for the structure of the introduction. Okay, from a broad part to a narrow specific problem and the statement of purpose and the rationale. So how do you write this? Okay, because I told you this thesis, my thing is about giving you some approach to making it easier to write. Start writing it backwards, because justification is easy because you already know the purpose. So when you're writing the dissertation, when you're writing a thesis, you start writing the third part of your introduction first. It's easier to write like that. Then you go to the second one, the scientific context in which the research questions are addressed. And then you know what to put into your background information, how to begin. So start from, the last part first. You'll be able to write it in a much easier way. This is what I have found. So you might, is there a difference in the structure of the introduction section in a research paper and a thesis? The answer is obviously yes, because in a research paper or a manuscript which you are submitting to a journal, objectives and hypothesis will form the last part of the introduction. So when you're writing a scientific paper to submit to a journal, objectives will always will form the last part of your introduction. Here, objectives are separate. So there's a separate section in the dissertation or thesis. So this should not be, this should not come into your introduction for a thesis. Okay. So it's generally written in the present tense. You can use past tense for some, because your background information, if there is a problem, previous problem, you'll want to write it in past tense. Active voice as far as possible. You can still use first person, but don't overdo it. So I have taken an introduction from a very small paper. This is a very short paper. And you can see in this, there are three parts to this introduction. Okay, this is not a thesis. This is from a journal paper. But if you look at this, it says studies have shown an increased risk in this use thrombosis with the use of oral contraceptives, risk of venous thrombosis with the use of combined oral contraceptives. They have found generally a higher risk during the first year of use with oral contraceptives containing desogestrel or gestodine rather than levonorgestrel. So here is their main background, okay, where they have shown that there is an increased risk of venous thrombosis. Then they are telling the gaps. Okay, with a shift from combined pills with this much to low dose pills, there is a decrease of venous thrombosis is expected, but results are conflicting. And evidence of further decrease in risk associated with the reduction to 20 micrograms estrogen is lacking. So they are pointing the gaps in the study. So this is the background. This is the lacunae identification along with a little bit of justification. And here they have given aims and objectives because this is for a research paper. So all the time you will see an introduction will have these three things. In a thesis, you are expected to have these three. Aims and objectives will go into a separate section. So to summarize, introduction should be short and arresting. Main purpose is to inform readers why did you undertake the study, as Sir Bradford Hill has already told us. And the three elements are background, a researchable problem or the gaps, and justification. So what we know is the first element, what we don't know is the second element, and why we did the study is the third element. And each paragraph should have a theme sentence or a topic sentence that sets the stage for the entire paragraph or paragraphs. That is a good way of writing it. So if you are writing in a thesis, my suggestion is you start writing it backwards. Start from element 3, 2, and then go to 1. In that way, you'll be able to write a better introduction. Okay, thank you. And I'm open to taking questions. Yes, please. Yeah, any questions?
Madam, good evening. Madam Vinod, good evening.
Yes, Vinod, yes, please, go ahead.
Madam, is there any guideline for or word limits for introduction, something like that?
Not for a thesis. In a thesis, there is no word limit or anything like that. As I said, you write approximately 3 pages of introduction in a thesis. Some journals may give you a word limit. I don't know. It depends on the different journals and journal styles. But for a thesis, there is no word limit. Okay. Just fix it for about 3 pages. That should be fine.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. For nice.
So someone has asked, once the thesis is approved by the external examiner, can any minor changes or typo errors or sentence reframing be done if required? You will need to ask that from the exam section. Actually, once it is, if it is just some typographical errors, I think I don't see anything wrong in doing in changing it. But otherwise, you shouldn't be doing major changes. That's not correct. Can personal opinion be a part of introduction? Okay. Now, if you want to put personal opinion means, like, let's say you are asking the opinion of some big expert and he has told you or he has sent you an email. This should be used very guardedly in a thesis. Reason being, many times people say things which are not, documented by data. So personal opinion cannot come in the introduction. I would not be, agreeing to having personal opinion being that. So can justification, like all the previous studies are done in Western literature and not in India, so we want to study here. Okay. So this is the common reason why this has nothing to do with the introduction. This is about asking an appropriate research question or a correct research question. That is another talk which I took for certain other people. So what goes into choosing a topic, that is different. So I will not dilute this. Here I am talking about the justification. So if your thesis has been justified, you have completed your thesis and you are writing your thesis because it has not been studied in Eastern India, go ahead and write it because you have no other choice. Okay, just hold on. I'm trying to answer some questions which have been given here. Can you give an example of writing from third element first, like from justification? Yeah, but why should I give an example? See, my idea is, see, there are 3 elements. Bhagwat wants to ask me to give an example. There are 3 elements as I have told you. So like I gave that paper, no? So in that paper, you see that there are 3 elements. So the third element you start writing first. That is what I'm saying. Because it is easier for you to write the third element. This is just a tip. If you still want to start off with the first element, that is fine. But my tip is it is easier to write from the third element because your justification you already know. You have planned, because of the justification only you have undergone the study. That is what I am saying. Okay. Can we write previous studies in introduction or not? Yes, previous studies have to be quoted because your background, then see the first element is the background. So obviously you'll be quoting some previous studies. Second element is the lacunae. Again, you're going to quote some previous studies. So definitely previous studies will be quoted because you're going to identify the gaps in those studies and say why you are going to do your study now. So definitely you will quote. Can non-surgical topics be selected as topics for surgical? So I'm not talking of topic selection here because that is a different talk. I don't want to dilute this thing. So that is the reason. So how long the introduction should be? Can we use any image along with? See, the introduction, that's what I said. In a thesis, an introduction should be at least 3 pages. Can we use any image along with an introduction? There is no harm. But because you're going to have a review of literature section, you can hold your image for that. So in a thesis, please don't use images. You can simply write, if needed, you can use. There is no hard and fast rule, but you should have your introduction section should be at least 3 pages, right? Yeah. Can we use newspaper articles or social media posts of government organizations to be? So again, that I will discuss when I'm coming to the reference section. The idea of using any references, you should be able to verify it, right? So if you are using some, let's say there was some disaster and you want to, you are doing some study about that disaster, and how was that disaster reported? It was reported in the newspaper, this thing. Nowadays, because of online newspaper reports, you can cite it. There is no harm. But please don't get opinions from blogs and newspaper articles as authentic references. It is not good. You should only choose scientific journals. But of course, if you want to talk about some disaster or something which has happened, you can certainly use that. Okay, any other questions? Okay, somebody is asking me how to apply for an ICMR project. My thing would be that you have to go to the ICMR website, please download their form, and then you have to fill it up. So that's the whole thing. You need to have a good idea. So that will come into research methodology, and then you can simply go and please write it up. Okay, Prashant wants to say personal opinion in introduction. In our experience, we see higher proportion. If you have, see, you can write this kind of a thing and say unpublished data, but when you write within brackets unpublished data, you better have the data with you. See, I remember sometime once when I wrote a paper, I wanted to quote someone who had made a presentation. I wrote to that author and I asked him that this was what you had presented. Can I allow this to be included as unpublished information, data, and all that? And I got a written, signed, letter that you can use it. So that is the better way of doing it. So if you want to say in our experience, we see a higher proportion of invasive bladder tumors, something like this, in comparison to the national average. The point is because there could be many reasons, isn't it? Why they are coming here and what kind of population you are looking at. what's your the sampling framework, and so on. So you can do that, but use it less. And if you are using it, make sure that you have enough that data is there. It might be unpublished, but you should have the data. Don't simply say that it is you write it without having the data with you. Yeah. Any other thing? Anyone else wants to?
Madam,
Yeah.
good evening, madam. This is Manish, madam.
Yes, Manish.
Yeah, I just, madam, please, can you elaborate a little bit more on this? How introduction of research proposal will be different when we are writing thesis or introduction?
Yeah, so in the reason why I'm saying it is, first is for your research proposal, you're not going to write a 3-page introduction. They're asking you to write an introduction in 50 to 100 words. If I remember right, it will be anywhere between not even 100, it's probably about 150 words. So a thesis, you're going to write about 1,000 words introduction. So the length itself is very different. Secondly, if you are going to write an introduction for your protocol, your 3 elements, for the 3 elements, you may not have enough, what shall I say, space to write in detail the background, the lacunae, and then finally the justification. In your research protocol, you probably will have very little time for you to write. So you might go straight 1 or 2 sentences about the background. And then mainly you will try to focus on the gaps and then the justification, because and then the justification. So this is how you will write in your protocol. That is what I would say. So the length itself will means that you will have to write much more.
All right, thank you very much, madam.
Yeah. So someone wants to know the studies which we wrote in introduction, can they be quoted in review of literature? Of course they can be quoted. There's nothing which is preventing you from not quoting them again. Are there any upcoming Zoom meetings? Yes. So this is the first Zoom meeting. This is going to be a series. We are going to have one more next Saturday, 6 to 7, and then the 3rd Saturday. So this is going to be there. Yeah. Anything else, please? Does the introduction have any impact in study design, observational? I don't get this question, because see, your study design will come into methodology. So your methodology depends on the research question or your objectives. So your introduction has nothing to do with the study design. Okay. The study design has everything to do with your research question and the objectives. So that is how I will look at it. I'm not sure whether I'm getting your question correctly. Can you please tell me more about the difference in the audience for a protocol and a thesis? See, the protocol is actually written for yourself. Why do you write a research protocol? You're writing a research protocol. So like you don't want to be like Christopher Columbus. No? When Christopher Columbus left, he thought he was going to reach India. He reached somewhere else. Okay. He didn't know where he was going. And when he reached that place also, he didn't know where he had been. We don't want to be like that. So you write a protocol for yourself. You want to be very clear what your objectives are, what your methodology is. In your methodology, you want to know what you're going to compare, what your output parameters will be, what statistical tests you are going to use, all that. So it is for yourself. But for in a thesis, it is after you have done everything, you are giving the story. So the audience is a wider audience. You want to share with the audience what you have done. The protocol is exactly for you. And of course, if you are getting funding, it is for the funding agencies or, the internal ethics committee and so on. So the audience is totally different. Yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise, I think we've had a good this thing. So, okay, how to tackle difficult questions who are not taking their thesis seriously. How are you? When you were asked by your guides, did you take it very seriously? So this is something which you have to work on, right? That is why I keep telling you, have enough meetings with your students. You have to make sure that they understand that thesis writing is difficult. It's going to take time. And if you start 3 months before they have to submit their thesis, it's far too late. So you have to keep on it. So that is the whole thing, because as I said, once the methodology has been approved, you can ask them to start writing with the methodology. Okay, they can start writing the review of literature. Because we are using computers now, it has become much more easier. So don't ask them, sorry, to start much earlier. Is there any difference in introduction in the protocol? Yeah, that I have already answered. In protocol and introduction in the thesis. In my slides itself, I said, because in the protocol, you have only about 150 to 150 words in which you have to write the introduction in the protocol. Yeah. So with that, I think we will finish now.
Ma'am, one question is there.
Yeah.
Can we elaborate all the objectives in the justification part of introduction? This is a question from Dr. Fakir Mohan Sahu.
No. That in the can tell me again what was it?
He has written, can we elaborate all the objectives in the justification part of introduction?
Okay. See, I would suggest that in a thesis, please have one primary objective. And maybe you will have 2 or 3 secondary objectives. If you have 10 primary objectives, that is not a good thesis. Because whenever we talk about research methodology, we say that your research should be focused. So have 1 or at the most 2 primary objectives and another 1 or 2 more secondary objectives. If you are going to start writing a justification for all your objectives, and if it is so very different, I don't think that is a good idea, because in a thesis, you are having a separate section for your objectives. So you can, there is no convention which prevents you from doing that, but I would suggest you save your objectives for the objective section. But justification for the objectives should be certainly, because what is it that you are going to, you are giving a justification for your study. So give the justification in totality in the last paragraph as the third element. That should be, I think that you can give. Okay. Right. Okay. So then we will meet again next week if that's fine.